The morning sun cast long shadows across the palace corridors as Prince William sat quietly in his study, staring at the official letter that would change everything. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on his shoulders, but his resolve remained unwavering. After months of careful consideration and countless sleepless nights, he and Catherine had made their choice. Catherine entered the room carrying 2 cups of tea, her movements graceful despite the emotional turmoil they both felt. She placed 1 cup beside William and settled into the chair across from him. The silence between them spoke volumes about the gravity of their situation. They had always been a team, facing challenges together, and this moment would be no different. "Are you certain this is what we want?" Catherine asked softly, her voice barely above a whisper. Her eyes reflected the same mixture of sadness and determination that William felt in his own heart. They had discussed this decision countless times, weighing every possible outcome and considering the impact on their children, the monarchy, and the millions of people who looked up to them. William reached across the small table and took her hand. "We've given everything we had to give," he replied, his voice steady despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm him. "Our children deserve to grow up with parents who are present, not constantly torn between duty and family." The decision hadn't been made lightly. For years they had balanced their royal responsibilities with their desire to be hands-on parents to George, Charlotte, and Louis. The couple had always known that their lives would be different from ordinary families. From the moment William was born, his path seemed predetermined. Catherine, though born a commoner, had embraced royal life with grace and dedication when she married William in 2011. Together, they had modernized the monarchy, bringing warmth and relatability to an institution often seen as distant and formal. But the constant scrutiny, the endless obligations, and the pressure to always appear perfect had taken its toll. They watched as their children struggled with the public attention, saw how every family outing became a media spectacle, and felt the strain of never being able to simply be themselves without consideration for how their actions might affect the crown. The breaking point had come during Louis's 7th birthday party. What should have been a private family celebration became front-page news when photographers with long-range lenses captured images of the intimate gathering in their garden. That night, as they tucked their children into bed, Charlotte had asked why people were always watching them through cameras. The innocent question from their daughter's lips hit them both like a physical blow. William remembered his own childhood, the constant presence of security, the inability to have normal friendships, and most painfully, the media frenzy that had ultimately contributed to his mother's death. He had sworn that his children would have a different experience, but he was beginning to realize that within the confines of royal life, that might be impossible. Catherine had been equally affected by the pressures of royal life. Despite her natural grace and apparent ease with public appearances, she struggled with anxiety about every speech, every outfit choice, and every public interaction being analyzed and criticized. She longed for the days when she could take her children to the park without a security detail, when a family trip to the grocery store didn't require weeks of advanced planning. The decision to step back from their senior royal roles hadn't come suddenly. It had been building for months as they watched their children grow and realized how much of their lives they were missing due to royal obligations. They wanted to attend every school play, every sports day, and every bedtime story without having to cancel because of a state dinner or royal engagement. Their announcement would shock the world, but they knew it was the right choice for their family. They had served the crown faithfully for over a decade, undertaken hundreds of royal engagements, and supported countless charitable causes. Now, they wanted to serve their children and each other in a more private capacity. The letter William held contained their formal request to step back from senior royal duties. It outlined their desire to split their time between the United Kingdom and Canada, where Catherine had family connections and where they felt their children could experience a more normal upbringing. They planned to continue supporting select charities and causes close to their hearts, but without the constant pressure of being senior working royals. As they sat together in the morning light, both William and Catherine felt a mixture of sadness and relief. They were leaving behind a life of incredible privilege and purpose, but they were also choosing to prioritize their family's well-being and their children's future happiness. William picked up his phone and called his father. The conversation with King Charles would be difficult but necessary. The king had always been supportive of his children's choices, and while he might be disappointed by their decision, William knew he would ultimately understand their reasoning. Catherine began mentally preparing for the conversations they would need to have with George, Charlotte, and Louis. The children would need to understand why their lives were changing and what it would mean for their futures. They had always tried to be honest with their children about their unique position in the world, but this conversation would be particularly challenging. The weight of their decision settled around them like a blanket. They knew that stepping back from royal duties would disappoint many people who admired them and looked forward to their public appearances. They had received thousands of letters from people who felt inspired by their work and their apparent devotion to duty. But as parents, their first responsibility was to their children. They wanted George, Charlotte, and Louis to have the freedom to choose their own paths in life, to make mistakes without global scrutiny, and to form relationships based on genuine connection rather than their titles or status. The sun climbed higher in the sky as William and Catherine continued to sit together, drawing strength from each other's presence. Soon they would need to inform the palace staff, prepare official statements, and begin the process of transitioning their responsibilities to other members of the royal family. Their graceful farewell to royal life was about to begin, and with it a new chapter for their family built on love, privacy, and the hope for a more normal future. The palace corridors buzzed with an unusual energy as news of William and Catherine's decision began to spread among the inner circle of staff. Private Secretary James Morrison received the call at precisely 9:30 a.m., his usual morning routine of reviewing the day's schedule interrupted by the prince's unexpected summons to an urgent meeting. William and Catherine sat across from their senior staff in the blue drawing room, a space that had witnessed countless important conversations throughout royal history. The weight of the moment wasn't lost on anyone present. Morrison, along with Press Secretary Sarah Chen and Personal Assistant Margaret Thompson, had served the couple faithfully for years, becoming more like family than employees. "We wanted you to hear this from us directly," Catherine began, her voice steady but emotional. "William and I have made the decision to step back from our roles as senior working royals." The words hung in the air like a confession, heavy with implication and finality. Morrison's pen froze mid-sentence on his notepad. In his 15 years of royal service, he had navigated countless crises and challenges, but this news left him momentarily speechless. Sarah Chen's eyes widened with surprise while Margaret Thompson's hand moved instinctively to cover her mouth. William continued, explaining their reasoning and their deep gratitude for the unwavering support their team had provided. "This decision comes from our hearts as parents and as people who want to give our children the best possible future. We know this affects all of you, and we're committed to ensuring smooth transitions for everyone." The staff members listened as William and Catherine outlined their plans. They would complete their remaining engagements through the end of the year, allowing time for other royals to take over their patronages and responsibilities. The transition would be gradual and dignified, ensuring that the charitable organizations they supported would not suffer from their departure. Margaret Thompson, who had been with Catherine since before her engagement to William, felt tears welling in her eyes. She had watched the couple navigate the pressures of royal life, had seen firsthand how they struggled to balance duty with family time. "Your Royal Highnesses," she said softly, "while this news is surprising, I understand your reasons completely. Your children are fortunate to have parents willing to make such sacrifices for their well-being." The conversation continued for over an hour as they discussed practical matters. Which engagements could be fulfilled by other royals? How would they handle the media announcement? What would happen to their current charitable partnerships? Every detail needed careful consideration to ensure their departure would be as smooth as possible. Meanwhile, across London, the broader royal household remained unaware of the momentous decision. At Buckingham Palace, King Charles was conducting his weekly meeting with the Prime Minister when his private phone rang. The king's expression grew serious as he listened to his son's words, his weathered hands gripping the phone tightly. "I see," the king said simply, his voice betraying no emotion. "Yes, William, I understand. We'll need to discuss this properly this evening." After ending the call, Charles sat in silence for several minutes, processing the news. As both a father and a monarch, he felt the complexity of emotions this decision brought. Pride in his son's dedication to family, concern for the monarchy's future, and understanding of the impossible pressures modern royalty faced. The king's first call was to Queen Camilla, who was visiting a children's hospital in Manchester. Her scheduled appearances suddenly seemed less important as she absorbed the news. "How are the children?" was her immediate response, her maternal instincts focusing on George, Charlotte, and Louis. Throughout their marriage to Charles, she had developed a genuine affection for her step-grandchildren and understood the unique challenges they faced. Back at Kensington Palace, William and Catherine began the difficult task of preparing their children for the changes ahead. They gathered George, Charlotte, and Louis in the family sitting room, a cozy space filled with their artwork, family photos, and the comfortable chaos of a busy household. "Mummy and Daddy need to talk to you about something important," Catherine began, settling Louis on her lap while George and Charlotte sat cross-legged on the carpet. At 13, George had begun to understand the weight of his future responsibilities, while 10-year-old Charlotte had recently started asking more questions about their public appearances and why people were always taking their pictures. William knelt down to his children's level, his voice gentle but serious. "We've decided that our family needs some changes. We're going to step back from some of our royal duties so we can spend more time together as a family." The explanation was simple, but he could see the questions forming in their young minds. Charlotte was the first to speak. "Does this mean we won't be royals anymore?" Her voice carried the innocence of childhood, but also a hint of relief that surprised both parents. The constant attention and restrictions had been more difficult for her than they had realized. "You'll always be our precious children," Catherine assured her, smoothing Charlotte's hair. "But yes, our lives will be different, more private, more like other families." George nodded slowly, his mature understanding beyond his years evident in his expression. Louis, at 7, was more concerned with immediate matters. "Can we get a dog now?" he asked hopefully, causing everyone to laugh despite the seriousness of the moment. The family had often discussed getting a pet, but royal protocols and their busy schedule had always made it complicated. "We can definitely talk about getting a dog," William promised, pulling his youngest son into a hug. The simple request highlighted exactly why they were making this change, so their children could have normal childhood experiences without the constraints of royal life. That evening, extended family members began receiving calls. Princess Anne expressed her understanding but also her sadness at losing such dedicated working royals. Prince Edward and Sophie offered their support, while quietly discussing how they might take on additional responsibilities. The ripple effects of William and Catherine's decision would be felt throughout the royal family. The most difficult conversation came when William called Prince Harry. Despite their strained relationship in recent years, William felt his brother deserved to hear the news directly from him. Harry's response was complex: surprise, understanding, and perhaps a hint of validation for his own earlier decision to step back from royal duties. As night fell over London, William and Catherine tucked their children into bed with extra care and attention. The day had been emotionally exhausting, but they felt a sense of peace about their choice. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they began implementing their transition plan, but tonight they were simply parents saying goodnight to their children. The palace prepared for the storm of media attention that would inevitably follow their announcement. Press statements were being carefully crafted, and contingency plans were put in place for managing public reaction. The world would soon learn of their decision, but for now, it remained a private family matter. The Buckingham Palace press office had never quite experienced a morning like this one. By 6 a.m., Communications Secretary David Richardson was already fielding calls from journalists who had somehow caught wind of unusual activity within the royal household. Rumors were swirling and speculation was reaching fever pitch across social media platforms worldwide. Sarah Chen sat at her desk, reviewing the carefully crafted press statement one final time. Every word had been deliberated over, every phrase examined for potential misinterpretation. The announcement needed to convey William and Catherine's deep respect for the monarchy, while clearly explaining their personal decision to prioritize their family's well-being. At 10 a.m. sharp, the official statement was released simultaneously across all royal communication channels. The first line read, "Their Royal Highnesses, the Prince and Princess of Wales have made the personal decision to step back from their roles as senior working members of the royal family to focus on raising their young family." Within minutes, the story had reached every corner of the globe. News anchors interrupted regular programming to break the news. Social media exploded with reactions ranging from shock and disappointment to understanding and support. The hashtag #LoRoyalFarewell began trending worldwide as millions of people shared their thoughts on the unexpected announcement. In television studios across Britain, royal correspondents scrambled to provide context and analysis. Royal biographer Margaret Whitmore found herself on BBC News, explaining to viewers that this decision represented one of the most significant developments in modern royal history since the abdication crisis of 1936. "This is unprecedented in the modern era," she explained to the anchor. "William and Catherine have been the golden couple of the royal family, widely admired for their dedication and modern approach to royal duties. Their decision suggests the pressures of contemporary royal life may be greater than many people realize." The public reaction was intense and divided. Outside Buckingham Palace, crowds began to gather despite the rainy London weather. Some people came to show their support for the couple's brave decision, while others expressed their disappointment at losing two of the monarchy's most popular figures. Mary Collins, a 67-year-old retired teacher from Surrey, stood among the crowd with tears in her eyes. "I understand why they're doing it," she told a reporter. "Those children deserve to have normal childhoods. But I'll miss seeing Catherine at the charity events. She always had such a genuine way with people." Across the Atlantic, American media outlets were equally captivated by the story. The couple's popularity in the United States meant that their decision resonated with millions of Americans who had followed their royal journey with fascination. Talk show hosts dedicated entire programs to discussing the announcement and its implications. Meanwhile, at Anmer Hall, William and Catherine had made the deliberate choice to shield their children from the media storm. They turned off televisions and put away phones, focusing instead on maintaining normalcy for George, Charlotte, and Louis. The family spent the morning baking cookies together, a simple activity that felt precious given the chaos surrounding them. "Daddy, why are there so many cars outside?" Charlotte asked, noticing the increased security presence and media vehicles positioned beyond their gates. Despite their efforts to maintain privacy, the children couldn't help but notice the unusual activity. William knelt down to Charlotte's level, choosing his words carefully. "People are interested in our family's news," he explained simply. "But what matters most is that we're all together and we're going to be just fine." His calm demeanor helped reassure all three children, though he and Catherine exchanged concerned glances about the level of attention their announcement had generated. Back in London, other members of the royal family were dealing with their own flood of media requests and public appearances. King Charles, who had a long-scheduled visit to a community center in Leeds, found himself facing questions about his son's decision from enthusiastic crowds and persistent journalists. The king supports his son and daughter-in-law's decision to prioritize their family, was the only statement palace officials would provide, but Charles's composed demeanor during his public appearances spoke volumes about his understanding of their choice. Princess Anne, known for her no-nonsense approach to royal duties, quietly increased her own schedule to help cover some of the engagements that William and Catherine would no longer be able to fulfill. Her dedication to the monarchy meant she understood the importance of ensuring continuity during this period of transition. The international implications of the decision also began to emerge. Commonwealth nations where William and Catherine had planned future visits needed to reorganize their schedules. The couple's planned tour of Australia and New Zealand, scheduled for the following spring, was quietly cancelled, disappointing thousands of people who had hoped to meet them. In Canada, where the couple planned to spend part of their time, reaction was mixed but generally supportive. Prime Minister Jennifer Walsh issued a statement welcoming them while respecting their desire for privacy. Canada has always been a place where families can build new lives and find peace, her statement read. We respect the Prince and Princess's decision and wish them well in this new chapter. The media attention extended beyond news outlets to social platforms where millions of people shared their personal reactions. Supportive messages poured in from parents around the world who understood the challenge of balancing career demands with family responsibilities. Many people shared their own stories of making difficult choices to prioritize their children's well-being. However, not all reactions were positive. Some royal watchers expressed anger and disappointment, feeling that William and Catherine were abandoning their responsibilities to the crown and the British people. Heated debates emerged online about duty versus personal happiness, with passionate arguments on both sides. Royal photographer James Mitchell, who had covered William and Catherine's relationship since their university days, found himself reflecting on the journey he had witnessed. I photographed their wedding, the birth of their children, countless official engagements, he shared with colleagues. What struck me most was how they always tried to protect their children's privacy while fulfilling their public roles. This decision makes complete sense when you understand how much they prioritize being parents first. As the day progressed, the story continued to evolve. Constitutional experts debated the implications for the line of succession and the future of the monarchy. Political commentators discussed how this decision might affect public support for the royal family during challenging economic times. Despite the global attention, William and Catherine remained focused on their family. That evening, after the children were in bed, they sat together reviewing messages of support from friends, family, and even strangers who understood their decision. The overwhelming theme was one of respect for their courage in choosing family over duty, even when that choice came with significant personal and public costs. The first day of their new reality had been more intense than they had anticipated, but they felt confident in their decision. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as they began the practical work of transitioning their responsibilities, but they faced it together, united in their commitment to giving their children the childhood they deserved. 3 weeks after their announcement, William and Catherine embarked on what would become known as their farewell tour, a series of final official engagements that would mark the end of their time as senior working royals. The tour was designed to honor their commitments while giving them the opportunity to personally thank the organizations and people who had supported them throughout their royal careers. Their first stop was the Royal Marsden Hospital, where Catherine had been patron for nearly 8 years. As their car approached the familiar building, she felt a mixture of sadness and pride. This hospital had been one of her most meaningful patronages, and saying goodbye would be particularly emotional. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, the hospital's chief executive, greeted them at the entrance with a warm smile that couldn't quite hide her own sadness about their departure. "Your Royal Highness," she said to Catherine, "you've been such an incredible support to our patients and staff. Your visits have brought so much hope and joy to people during their darkest moments." Catherine spent the morning visiting cancer patients, many of whom she had met on previous visits. In the children's ward, 8-year-old Tommy Henderson had been eagerly waiting for her arrival. He had been battling leukemia for 2 years, and Catherine's previous visits had become highlights during his treatment. "Princess Catherine," Tommy called out as she entered his room, his face lighting up despite his obvious fatigue from treatment. "I made you something." He proudly presented a drawing he had created showing Catherine with angel wings, surrounded by all the children from the ward. Catherine's eyes filled with tears as she accepted the precious gift. "Tommy, this is absolutely beautiful," she said, sitting beside his bed. "I will treasure it always." She spent 20 minutes with Tommy, listening to his stories about school and his dreams of becoming a doctor when he grew up. These were the moments that made their decision so bittersweet. Catherine genuinely loved her patronage work and felt deeply connected to the causes she supported. But she also knew that stepping back was necessary for her family's well-being, and she hoped that her departure would allow other royals to develop equally meaningful relationships with these organizations. Meanwhile, William was conducting his own farewell visits. At the Homeless Prevention Center in Birmingham, he met with Marcus Johnson, a young man who had turned his life around with help from the programs William had championed. Marcus had been living on the streets at 16, but now worked as a counselor, helping other homeless youth. "Your support for this center changed everything for people like me," Marcus told William during their private conversation. "You didn't just visit and leave. You listened to our stories and helped make real changes happen." William was deeply moved by Marcus's words and proud of the practical difference his patronage had made in young people's lives. The emotional weight of these farewells was taking its toll on both William and Catherine. Each engagement reminded them of the meaningful work they were leaving behind, even though they remained committed to their decision. They found comfort in knowing that their patronages would be transferred to other capable royals who would continue the important work. Princess Anne had agreed to take over several of Catherine's patronages, including the Royal Marsden Hospital. Her practical approach and decades of experience made her an ideal successor. During a private meeting with Catherine, Anne offered reassurance about the continuity of the work. "These organizations will continue to thrive," Anne told her. "Your legacy isn't ending, it's evolving. The foundation you've built will support whatever comes next." Her words provided Catherine with some peace about her departure from these meaningful roles. The children accompanied their parents on several of the farewell engagements, giving them the opportunity to see firsthand the important work their parents had been doing. George, Charlotte, and Louis visited a youth center in Manchester, where William had been patron, watching as their father interacted with teenagers who had benefited from the programs he supported. 13-year-old George was particularly affected by meeting Jake Williams, a young man only a few years older than himself, who had overcome significant challenges with the center's help. "It makes me understand why this work is so important to Dad," George confided to his mother afterward. The experience helped him appreciate both the value of his parents' royal work and their reasons for stepping back. The media coverage of the farewell tour was extensive, but respectful. Journalists and photographers who had covered William and Catherine for years understood the historic nature of these final engagements. Many had developed genuine relationships with the couple and felt their own sense of loss about the end of this chapter. Royal photographer Emma Thompson, who had captured countless images of the couple's official engagements, found herself documenting not just their activities, but the emotions of everyone involved. "There's a poignancy to these final visits," she observed. "Everyone knows they're witnessing the end of an era." One of the most emotional stops was their visit to the children's hospice where they had spent Christmas morning for the past 5 years. The staff and families there had come to see William and Catherine as extended family members, and their annual visit had become a cherished tradition. Little Sarah Mitchell, a 6-year-old with a terminal illness, had specifically requested to see Princess Catherine one more time. Catherine spent an hour with Sarah reading stories and playing with her dollhouse. Sarah's mother, Linda, watched through tears as her daughter laughed and played, knowing this would likely be their final meeting. "She's given Sarah so much joy over the years," Linda whispered to William. Even in her final weeks, Sarah talks about Princess Catherine's visits. That's a gift beyond measure. These conversations reinforced William and Catherine's understanding of the impact their royal work had on real people's lives. The farewell tour also included visits to military units where William had served as patron. His connection to the armed forces, stemming from his own military service, had resulted in deep relationships with service members and their families. At RAF Northolt, squadron members presented him with a commemorative plaque honoring his years of support. Squadron leader Michael Davies spoke on behalf of his colleagues. "Sir, your understanding of military life and your genuine care for service families has meant everything to us. You've been more than a patron, you've been one of us." The ceremony was deeply moving for William, who had found great meaning in his military patronages. As the farewell tour continued, William and Catherine began to feel a sense of closure about their decision. While leaving behind their patronages was difficult, they could see that the work would continue under new leadership. Their legacy wasn't ending but transforming, and that knowledge brought them peace. The final engagement of their farewell tour would be at Westminster Abbey, where they had been married 13 years earlier. The significance of ending their royal careers in the same place where their public life together had begun wasn't lost on anyone involved in the planning. Preparations for this final official appearance were already underway, with every detail being carefully considered to ensure it would be a fitting conclusion to their years of dedicated service to the Crown and the British people. Westminster Abbey stood majestically against the grey December sky, as London prepared for what would become one of the most memorable royal events in modern history. The ancient stones that had witnessed coronations, royal weddings, and state funerals would now host William and Catherine's final official engagement as senior working royals, a service of gratitude celebrating their years of dedicated service. The Abbey had been chosen specifically for its deep significance in their lives together. Here 13 years earlier, they had exchanged vows before 2 billion viewers worldwide, beginning their journey as a married couple committed to serving the Crown. Now, in the same sacred space, they would close that chapter with dignity and grace. Dean of Westminster, Dr. Patricia Williams, had worked closely with William and Catherine to create a service that would honor their contributions while celebrating the future. This service isn't about endings, she explained during the planning meetings. It's about gratitude for service given and hope for the paths ahead. The guest list read like a who's who of British society and international dignitaries, but it also included hundreds of ordinary people whose lives had been touched by William and Catherine's work. Marcus Johnson, the former homeless youth who had turned his life around with William's support, sat beside Lady Eleanor Rothschild. Sarah Mitchell's mother Linda was there, representing the hospice families who had been blessed by Catherine's compassion. King Charles and Queen Camilla arrived first, their presence underscoring the family's unity despite the difficult circumstances. Charles had privately struggled with his son's decision, but had come to respect the courage it took to prioritize family over tradition. His own experience as a father had taught him that sometimes love requires letting go. Princess Anne entered with Prince Edward and Sophie, all three having quietly taken on additional responsibilities to help fill the void that William and Catherine's departure would create. Their presence demonstrated the continuity of the monarchy and the family's commitment to service, even in times of change. The most poignant moment came when Prince Harry and Meghan entered the Abbey. The brothers hadn't spoken publicly in months, but this occasion had prompted a private reconciliation. They had met the day before, with their children playing together while William and Harry talked honestly about their different choices and their shared love of family. George, Charlotte, and Louis walked down the aisle with their parents, their composure remarkable for such young children facing such a public moment. Charlotte held her mother's hand tightly, while George walked with the bearing of someone who understood the weight of the occasion. 7-year-old Louis waved shyly at familiar faces in the congregation, bringing smiles to many who were struggling with their own emotions. The service began with the hymn, "Guide Me, O Thou Great Redeemer," the same song that had filled the Abbey during William and Catherine's wedding. As the familiar melody soared through the ancient space, many in the congregation were transported back to that joyful April day when the future had seemed limitless and full of promise. Archbishop of Canterbury, Dr. Michael Henderson, delivered a sermon that masterfully balanced celebration of William and Catherine's service with understanding of their decision. True service, he said, sometimes requires us to make difficult choices. Today we honor a couple who have served with distinction and now choose to serve in a different way, as devoted parents who prioritize their children's well-being above all else. Dr. Jennifer Walsh from the Royal Marsden Hospital gave a reading that highlighted the practical impact of Catherine's patronage work. Her voice carried emotion as she described how Catherine's visits had brought hope to cancer patients and their families during their darkest hours. Her Royal Highness didn't just visit, she truly saw each person as an individual worthy of dignity and care. The musical program included pieces chosen by William and Catherine to represent different aspects of their royal journey. The London Symphony Orchestra performed Vaughan Williams's Fantasia on a Theme by Thomas Tallis, a piece that had become associated with British resilience and hope. The choir of Westminster Abbey sang Handel's Zadok the Priest, connecting this service to centuries of royal tradition. But perhaps the most moving musical moment came when Charlotte stepped forward to sing Amazing Grace with the Abbey Choir. Her clear, pure voice filled the vast space, and there wasn't a dry eye in the congregation as she sang with remarkable composure for a 10-year-old. The choice of song, about finding grace through difficult times, seemed perfect for the occasion. William addressed the congregation with words that had been carefully crafted but came from his heart. Catherine and I have been privileged to serve alongside incredible people who dedicate their lives to helping others. We are not ending our commitment to service. We are changing how we serve. Our greatest service now is to our children, to give them the childhood they deserve and the freedom to choose their own paths. Catherine spoke about the honor of representing the Crown and working with the charitable organizations that had become so dear to her heart. The work will continue, she assured the congregation. The causes we have supported are in capable hands, and the love and dedication they represent will endure long after we have stepped away from official duties. The service included prayers for the future of the monarchy, for the charitable causes that William and Catherine had championed, and for their family as they began their new chapter. The collective prayer felt like a blessing being extended not just to the departing couple, but to everyone present who had been touched by their service. As the service concluded, William and Catherine processed slowly down the aisle, stopping to acknowledge friends, colleagues, and beneficiaries of their charitable work. They paused at the tomb of the unknown warrior, where William had laid Catherine's bridal bouquet 13 years earlier, creating a circular moment that brought their royal journey full circle. Outside the Abbey, thousands of well-wishers had gathered despite the cold December weather. The crowd was remarkably quiet and respectful, understanding the solemnity of the occasion. Many held signs thanking William and Catherine for their service, while others simply stood in silent appreciation. The family emerged from the Abbey together, and for a moment, they paused on the steps where they had posed for their wedding photographs, more than a decade earlier. The contrast was striking. Then they had been a young couple embarking on their royal adventure. Now they were experienced parents making the brave choice to prioritize their family over tradition. Catherine's final wave to the crowd was captured by photographers around the world, an image that would become iconic for its mixture of sadness and hope. William placed his hand on George's shoulder, a gesture that seemed to pass something important from father to son, while also protecting his child from the weight of expectation. As their car pulled away from Westminster Abbey for the last time as senior working royals, William and Catherine felt a complex mixture of emotions. Relief, sadness, pride, and hope all competed for space in their hearts. Behind them, the Abbey stood as a testament to continuity and tradition. Ahead of them lay an uncertain but chosen future, focused on family and the privacy they had long sought. The service had been their gift to the British people, a graceful farewell that honored their years of service, while blessing their chosen path forward. In the days to come, the images and words from Westminster Abbey would be remembered as the moment when two people chose love over duty, family over tradition, and private happiness over public service. 6 months later, the morning sun filtered through the kitchen windows of their new home nestled in the countryside of British Columbia, Canada. William stood at the stove making pancakes, while Catherine packed lunchboxes for the children's first day at their new local school. The simple domestic scene would have been impossible in their former life, where every meal was prepared by staff, and every school run required security coordination. "Mum, I can't find my backpack," Charlotte called from upstairs, her voice carrying the normal anxiety of any child starting at a new school. Catherine smiled, remembering how different this was from their London mornings, which had been carefully choreographed by private secretaries and security teams. "It's by the front door, sweetheart," Catherine called back, spreading peanut butter on whole wheat bread with the same care she had once applied to reviewing briefing notes for state visits. The ordinariness of the moment filled her with a contentment she hadn't expected to find so quickly. George appeared in the kitchen wearing his new school uniform, a simple navy polo shirt and khaki pants that looked remarkably normal compared to the formal blazers and ties of his previous exclusive London prep school. At 14, he had been the most anxious about the move, worried about making friends who knew nothing about royal protocols or his future inheritance. "Dad, what if someone recognizes us?" George asked quietly, a concern that had been weighing on him since their arrival in Canada. Despite their efforts to live privately, their faces were still recognizable to many people around the world. William flipped a pancake thoughtfully before answering. "If they do, we'll handle it together," he said, placing a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "But most people here are going to see you as just George, not as a prince. That's exactly what we wanted for you." The transformation in their daily lives had been remarkable. Gone were the daily briefings about upcoming engagements, the constant presence of protection officers, and the pressure to always appear perfectly composed. Instead, their days revolved around school runs, homework help, and weekend activities that any Canadian family might enjoy. Louis, now 8 and adjusting perhaps most easily to their new life, bounded into the kitchen with their golden retriever, puppy, Maple, whom they had adopted shortly after arriving in Canada. The dog had been impossible during their royal life, too unpredictable, too messy, too normal. But here she was, just another member of their family. "Can Maple come to school with me?" Louis asked hopefully, scratching behind the puppy's ears. His innocent question made both parents laugh, a sound that had become more frequent in recent months as the weight of royal responsibility had lifted from their shoulders. "Not today, buddy," William said, serving Louis his pancakes. "But maybe, this weekend we can take her hiking on the mountain trails." The casual promise of a family hike, without security clearances or media notifications, still felt wonderfully strange to both parents. Catherine had found unexpected joy in the mundane tasks of daily life. Shopping for groceries without causing a public spectacle, attending parent-teacher conferences without royal protocol officers, and simply walking their dog through the neighborhood had become precious freedoms. She had even joined a local book club, where she was known simply as Kate from the house on Elm Street. Their integration into the community had been helped by the discretion of their Canadian neighbors. While most people recognized them, there was an unspoken agreement to respect their privacy. Children played with George, Charlotte, and Louis without treating them differently, and local shop owners served them with friendly politeness rather than starstruck awe. The hardest adjustment had been learning to live without the structure that had defined their adult lives. In London, every day had been planned months in advance, every appearance carefully choreographed. Now they had to create their own routines and find new purposes for their time and energy. William had begun working with a local environmental conservation group, using his passion for protecting natural habitats in a hands-on way that would have been impossible as a senior royal. He spent 2 days a week in the field, conducting wildlife surveys and working alongside park rangers. The physical work and direct contact with nature provided him with a sense of accomplishment that had sometimes been missing from ceremonial royal duties. Catherine had quietly begun volunteering at the Children's Hospital in nearby Vancouver, working directly with young cancer patients without any media attention or official recognition. Dr. Sarah Kim, the hospital's chief pediatric oncologist, had no idea of Catherine's royal background when she first applied to volunteer, accepting her simply based on her genuine desire to help children facing serious illness. "Kate has this amazing ability to connect with our young patients," Dr. Kim later told her colleagues. "She sits with them, listens to their fears, and somehow makes them feel less alone. It's exactly what we need in our volunteers." The work provided Catherine with the meaningful connection to charitable causes she had missed, while maintaining the privacy their family required. The children were thriving in ways that surprised even their parents. Charlotte had discovered a talent for drama at her new school, and had been cast in the spring play. George had joined the school's environmental club and was planning a presentation about climate change that drew on knowledge he had gained from his father's conservation work. Louis had made friends with the boy next door, and spent afternoons building tree forts and catching tadpoles in the local creek. Their evening routine had become sacred family time. Without official engagements pulling them away, William and Catherine were present for homework help, bedtime stories, and the countless small conversations that build strong family relationships. They ate dinner together every night, sharing stories about their days without the interruption of royal duties or media obligations. "I love that we can just be together," Charlotte had told her mother one evening as Catherine tucked her into bed. "No one takes pictures of us all the time, and no one tells us how to act." Her simple observation captured exactly why their sacrifice had been worthwhile. The global reaction to their new life had gradually shifted from intense interest to respectful distance. Occasional paparazzi photos appeared in international media, usually showing them at local events or during family outings, but the images portrayed a family living normally, rather than performing royal duties. The public seemed to understand and respect their desire for privacy. King Charles had visited them once, a private family trip that received no media coverage. He spent a week getting to know his grandchildren in a way that had never been possible during their royal lives. Watching George teach his grandfather to fish and seeing Charlotte show him her school art projects, Charles finally understood why his son had made such a difficult choice. "They're different children here," he confided to William during a quiet evening on the porch. "More relaxed, more themselves. You made the right decision." His words provided the final validation that William and Catherine needed to feel completely at peace with their choice. The anniversary of their departure from royal life passed quietly, marked only by a family dinner at home. They had received hundreds of messages from people around the world expressing continued support for their decision and sharing how their courage had inspired others to prioritize family over external expectations. As spring turned to summer in British Columbia, William and Catherine often reflected on the journey that had brought them to this peaceful place. They had traded global fame and influence for something more precious: the ability to raise their children with love, attention, and the freedom to choose their own paths in life. Their graceful farewell to royal duty had indeed touched millions of people, not because of its grandeur or ceremony, but because of its honesty about the challenges of balancing public service with private happiness. They had shown the world that sometimes the most courageous choice is stepping away from what others expect in order to protect what matters most. In the quiet moments of their new life, surrounded by the natural beauty of Canada and the laughter of their children, William and Catherine knew they had made the right choice. Their story would be remembered not as the abandonment of duty, but as a triumph of love, family, and the courage to choose happiness over obligation.